Welcome to Auto Restoration Videos. In this little clip, we're going to show you how to repair plastic. Now, this is called a dashboard speaker shelf. This came off an '83 Buick Regal. I am pretty sure the Grand National is the same thing. But I'm going to put money on it, but it probably is. Now what happens with these, if you leave your car sit outside in the sun is going to beat on this plastic. Eventually it's going to break and crack and dry out. And that's what happened here. So we want to repair this thing. Now, keep in mind here that with almost all repairs, you're going to have to repaint the piece. And since this is plastic, you're going to have to use a plastic fusion paint. Now this is the piece, one of the pieces that broke off, and it goes right over here. Like so. Now the one on the other side, I already repaired. We'll get to that one later. And there is a big crack in this thing right here. I don't know if you can see that, but she split right here. Now, the thing is, what kind of glue are you going to use to put this thing back together? And how you're going to make it so it's nice and strong so it don't crack again? Well, first what you need to get yourself some printed circuit board, or epoxy board I call it. Now this one here is a little too thick, but this one is just right. Now this one is copper clad. You really don't need the copper cladding on it. But if it's on there, hey, you can still use it. That's no problem. You're going to use these as like a Band-Aid patch. We're going to epoxy it on just like a Band-Aid. Alright? So, now what kind of epoxy are we going to use? I had good luck with this JB Industrial Weld. I used it a couple times already, and it hasn't let me down yet. So that's more I can say than a lot of women I knew. But this is good stuff. I used this on an intake manifold once, and I ground it all down, and sanded it off. And after I was done, you couldn't even tell a repair was made. And supposedly, this can take up this, I don't know, 400 degrees or something like that. 600. This can go up to take up to 600 degrees. So, what we're going to do, on the back, we're going to have to put a reinforcement piece on here, because just by sticking these two pieces together and putting epoxy on all the edges, that really isn't going to give us much of a bonding surface, if you know what I mean. So if I just hold this thing together here, you can see we got to try to find a flat spot now. So right here I got a pretty good flat spot. Alright, I can cut a little piece of that epoxy board, make it about 1 inch long by about 1/2 inch wide. And after I get this together and held in place with some clamps, I could put one little reinforcement piece here, and I could put another one right in here, right in this section right here. Alright, now once I get them glued together, get them held in place, we'll be using clamps. You need yourself an assortment of different little clamps. Now, this one here is a pretty good size one. I got this at Harbor Freight for almost next to nothing. You can put this, once you get it glued in place, once you put your epoxy in, you can put a clamp here like so. And you can get one of these other little ones and you can stick them on the side over here. Okay? Like this. Now, let me show you how I did the other side. Now the other side, you see right up over here where I put my little Band-Aid patch in, okay? Now, I really had no other place to put another reinforcement strip in here, so I had to just get by with one. And when I put this patch in, a little Band-Aid patch, I had to use one of these clamps here because it will reach over the edge and hold this thing in place, like so. That'll hold it nice and tight. You see what I mean? And on the other side, I just believed I used, yes, I used that little piece there. Now, the thing is too, when this piece dries, you have to have it standing vertical. So gravity is going down and holding this piece together. Okay? And after you have this thing standing up, you can push it together a little tighter and you can readjust your clamps a little bit so they're right over where the split is. And if you have any excess epoxy coming up through the top, you have to wipe it off with a clean cloth quickly. Now you don't want to have to do any sanding on the top part of this piece because all your little scratches and sand marks and everything are going to show up in your top coat paint. Alright, it's going to look like crap. Not only that the scratches will show up, but there is this fine texture on this. Well, this is really a fine texture on this one. So this one, you could probably get by with sanding it with some like 220 or 380 or something like that, or 400 or something like that for your finished sanding, and then just paint it with your vinyl paint. But on most of these, you have a grain pattern on here that makes it look like leather, fake leather, okay? It's plastic. And if you try to sand that all down and then you paint it, you're going to have one big round spot on this thing that's going to stick out like a bullseye and it's going to look terrible. You don't want to do that. You want to put any patches that you have on the back side and keep this top surface clean. So I'm going to go ahead and mix up some of my epoxy and put this together, and we'll see how this stuff goes, all right? Now the first thing you want to do is get yourself some, say like 100 sandpaper. Cut yourself a little piece off it. Maybe fold in half a little bit. And you want to find that flat spot where you're going to put your patch in, your Band-Aid. Now here's my little Band-Aid here, my Band-Aid epoxy patch. Now this is real shiny. Okay? You're going to have to go ahead and sand this piece down to make it, to rough it up. Because chances are, since that piece is just so shiny, there's a chance that the epoxy might not even stick to it. Almost like trying to epoxy something to glass. Break that shine off. Get down to the regular fiberglass board that's underneath. I don't know if you can see that, but I took the whole shine off, and you see this is the side I didn't touch. I hope you can see it. Take my word for it, it's real dull. Now you want to go over here to where your two pieces are going together and find this flat spot where you're going to put this patch. I'll probably put it in like here. I think that looks... You don't have to put it in straight across. You can go on a little bit of an angle. So I'm going to put one in here, and then I'm going to put another one right behind this section right here. Okay, so now you want to do is you want to scuff this down. Just the spot where you're going to put this patch in. Because even with this plastic, they exhume oils. And you're not going to get anything to stick if you don't kind of rough this up a little bit. Then you want to wipe this down. Make sure you don't use a greasy rag when you wipe it down. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to get my JB Weld. Just put one little dab of the red on one side and one little dab of the black on the other side. This is like epoxy with hardener. Okay? And then you're going to mix it together. Find a piece of paper here. Take the cap off a little bit. You don't want to go too crazy. We don't need much. We don't need much. We're not going crazy here. A little bit of the hardener. You get yourself a little stick. My stick is still has some of the old epoxy on. I did with the other side. And you want to stir this together. Mix it real good until you see one solid color. You can't see streaks in it. It's got to be one solid gray. Make sure you get it real good. Now this thing takes about I think three hours or something like that to get cured, 3 to 4. So what we want to do, we want to coat each edge. There's not much, I'll tell you on this. There's not much of an edge here that we have to glue together, because we have a speaker that gets mounted under this, and they have openings cut in here, so that's why it's really not that thick. Except we get over here up the front. Now that's another story. You got some meat there. Then you put that aside. Then you want to do the same thing to the other side. Alright? And put some on here. Then after you get them both stuck together, then you're going to put your clamps on. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put the glue on this side just like I did with that side and clamp it up. We'll be right back. Now once the piece is clamped together a little bit, like I said before, you want to make sure you get all of this epoxy off the top surface. We don't care too much about that bottom surface. Nobody's going to see that anyway. You might have to remove a clamp. See, now I have a Band-Aid behind this. But this is coming out on the top. Whenever you wipe, always make sure you get a clean part of your rag that you wipe it with, or else you're just going to be smearing more stuff all over the place. Now, I screwed up. I didn't really screw up, but I got epoxy on that clamp that I'm going to have to take off in a little while. I'm going to have to get a bigger clamp to reach in and get the piece in the back. Okay, let me turn it over. Now you can see that I have a Band-Aid patch here and I have a Band-Aid patch there. Now I'm not exactly on a crack here. You want to make sure your clamps are exactly on the cracks, and then you want to push down the piece to make sure it's seated well. Now, when this piece is drying, you want to keep it in this position so gravity's pulling down on this. And whatever kind of other little glue you see sticking out up on the top, now's the time to get it off. You might have to get yourself some toothpicks sometimes if you have like a grill like this one. I see a lot of epoxy here. I don't like that. You might have to remove this one clamp for a second, as much as I hate to, and go over this one with a rag. Now when you put it back on, you want to make sure you grab that patch in the back. Oh, that's it. We're going to let this side dry now. I'm going to lean this up against the wall so it's vertical, and hopefully nobody will knock it over. And we'll let it sit there for a couple hours. And it will come out looking just like the other piece. I still have one more repair to do on a split. It's right in here somewheres. But you only do one at a time. You don't want to get too involved here. So there you have it. How to repair a piece of broken plastic from an automobile. This is Vince from Auto Restoration Videos, telling you to just hang in there and pay attention to the work you're doing. Don't do any sloppy jobs. Clean up after your mess, so you're always starting with something fresh. You got to work in a clean area, and you got to stay clean. Don't pay no attention to my workbench here. I'm working on 3 projects at the same time. So that's it, gentlemen. We'll see you in the next video. Adios.